Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and I'm just going to do a pretty casual video. This is not scripted at all, it's just me shooting the shits. And the topic that I do want to talk about is the rise of multiple independent animation studios. Nowadays, it seems like everyone in the animation industry is trying to start their own independent animation studio. And there's many reasons to this. I think the main one that a lot of people can agree with is that a lot of mainstream studios are screwing over artists and projects. Therefore, artists feel like they need to find an alternative to be able to practice their craft, to pursue the medium and their passion without being at the mercy of the mainstream industry and the casualties from it. So many artists are venturing into the independent animation side, and that also includes forming their own animation studio. Now, of course, there's many other reasons why a lot of artists start their own independent animation studio. One is just to simply form a corporation, and this is really common for artists who freelance or take multiple commissions. Or in some cases, an artist might be highly demanded, but they can't take on the work, therefore they start forming their own team, and that births a pipeline for an independent animation studio. Now, of course, there's many reasons why people form their own animation studio, but I think nowadays, because of the state of the industry, there's a lot of artists starting their own independent animation studio. Now, some of these people are really prolific already in the industry, and some of them are not well known at all. Some of them have little to zero experience. So there's a variety of artists at different stages in their career, as well as different places in the world. So with that being said, should you also join the bandwagon of forming your own animation studio? So I do want to do a very quick pros and cons from the get-go when it comes to starting your own animation studio. So I think the pro is that you're contributing to the animation industry, especially if you want to focus on independent animation. That could be a really cool thing. Forming a studio or a team, it's kind of like forming a brand. So like if you have a certain style or approach to your work and it's very specific to the team or the production or the studio, it's going to make that little team stand out. You definitely have more of a say of what type of work you'd want to contribute, and you also have more ownership of your work, both legality and creative. Now, if I were to quickly put the cons of starting an animation studio, I would say expect it not to be lucrative at all, meaning you're not going to make a lot of money doing it. If you're trying to do animation work that's above the norm or above average, you're going to realize that animation is not cheap. And if you're someone that loves being creative, you're going to have to also consider that most of your responsibilities are going to be management, are going to be more delegating. You're going to have to do more back-end stuff over creative. So you're definitely going to have to market a lot. Also, you're going to have to learn negotiation skills, and with an animation studio, it's quite tricky because there's a lot of factors that can affect the money talk. If you're not built for it, you're going to endure a lot of stress because of it. Because now this thing is bigger than just you and yourself. You've got other parties involved, and some of those parties highly depend on you. And that also means there's more to lose. One thing that I do need to establish is an animation team is not necessarily the same thing as a studio. And I will tell you guys that this is just a mere opinion of mine. You could make stuff with acquaintances, with friends, whether artists are getting paid or not, or whether there's some money involved in that. I don't think an animation team is necessarily a studio. And I see groups of people teaming up to make something together, and they call themselves blank studios, but they're not necessarily a studio. Because when I think of a studio, I also think of something that is a business and primarily functions as a business. And of course, there's some legal paperwork to go with that. And that's just my opinion. I think a studio and an animation team are not necessarily the same. However, I do think that there is some value just doing an animation team. If, let's say, you're trying to learn how to work with other people, how to collaborate, and sort of figure out a pipeline together, I think there's something there that's still worth it if you eventually want to, let's say, help form a studio. So now you've decided you're going to make your own animation studio, and this is sort of a broad thing to say because there's a lot of different services an animation studio can provide, as well as the purpose of the animation studio. Is it there to service other clients, or is it there for artists to make their own independent and original ideas come to life? Can it be a bit of both, or is the animation studio and its works meant to be a supplement for another product? Not all animation studios are meant to make projects from beginning to end. In fact, some studios specialize in a certain department. So some studios specialize in pre-production, which is storyboards, animatics, visual development, some design work, some character designs. And some studios are strictly production, where they just do animation work, they ink and paint, they composite everything together, And it could be even more specific for different types of specialties. In fact, there are sub-studios that mostly focus on in-betweens, and there are some sub-studios that really just focus on lip syncing. You'll notice how common it is for animation studios to sort of collaborate with each other for one project, because some of those studios specialize in a specific department. However, from what I've been told from a producer, it's actually quite recommended that a studio is able to do a project from beginning to end. So if you are going to, let's say, start your own animation studio, it's kind of a good idea to know what the purpose of the studio is. To provide services or to make your own original content. Most studios make money by providing services for other clients. If you want to make money but only just do independent animation, your own original ideas and stuff like that, that's going to be a tough time. And at that point, money isn't really the main priority here. But what if you're doing an animation studio just to sell a product? Meaning the animation project or the animation studio is really just a supplement to an existing product. So let's say your main product are little toys and plushies and little merch, but you want to promote that. And so you form a studio that's sole purpose is to make content promoting that product. The product could be a comic, it could be a book, it could be a game. The main product is something else that's not an animation production. Or comics or other form of product. So the animation project is really just a big advertisement for those. Or like I mentioned before, it's really just a corporation, it's not a studio with a clear infrastructure. But it's a corporation that clients pay to if you're doing freelance work for them. So yeah, if you do plan to sort of establish an animation studio, it's a good idea to figure out what kind of service you want to provide, or the overall purpose of the studio. So let's say you figured out what your studio is and you've decided its purpose. So I think a common mistake that I hear a lot is artists just want to work with other artists. They don't really think about the back end stuff, such as the production, the producers, the bookkeepers, accountants, etc. I think these are all equally important people to help the studio run and be consistent. So I do think it's a very good idea to team up with a producer if you are thinking about starting a studio. And if both your goals sort of align, a producer can help you establish the pipeline or the foundation of the studio. They can help get you funding, negotiation, they can help you make connections for potential clients, and give some form of direction and consultant of how the studio can run as a business. Another thing that I would encourage is to look into getting an accountant or a bookkeeper. So this is the person that can look into, the taxes and the filing for the corporation, making sure those things are paid off or taken care of, the corporation paperwork. And eventually, if you get more people and staff involved with the studio, they can help figure out how to pay the corresponding employees. So if you just want to make a corporation where you're the only one that's dealing with the work, I think this one's good to have if you just want to have a corporation running. And like I said, a corporation doesn't have to be a full running studio. And if you actually decide to make that corporation into a studio, then you can look into teaming up with a producer. And once you figure it out, your producer, and let's say you have a gig and you have your bookkeeper, I think it's good to look into getting production assistants, production managers, and coordinators, because I feel like those are the connecting tissues that help connect assets, making sure schedules are met, deadlines are met, and making sure artists are being communicated throughout. And of course, there's other people like potential lawyers, potential agents. I don't think that you should worry about that stuff. I would say think about getting a producer and then maybe a bookkeeper. But if you want to make a studio that is a business, I would start with teaming up with a producer. I'm actually quite hesitant on joining a studio or forming a studio where it's just artists, because in most cases that will be a disorganized mess. And speaking of artists and the creative side, I think it is a very, very good thing to establish the leadership and roles. And I think a lot of artists start a studio thinking that every artist will have equal rights and equal say, equal ownership and responsibilities. You definitely need someone to call all the shots and to make the final decision so things can actually move forward. And artists need to stick to their lane and respect each other's lanes. So yeah, if you're starting a studio, you might want to think about if the studio is meant to act as a business or if it's just a collective or a team of people where no money is involved. And if it is a business or a service, what kind of services does that studio provide? Is it work for clients? Is it helping a specific department for a bigger production? And then you got to team up with the right people. And I would say team up with people that can help run the back end of the studio, meaning the non-creative stuff. I think it's good to have experience working in a production in the industry, but if not that, Try collaborating with other artists to make something together. So let's say if you're an animator, you do the animation and someone else does the backgrounds and then someone else does, let's say, the coloring. I think it's good to learn how to collaborate and learn how to sort of gauge whose responsibility is what and how to respect each other's responsibilities. And here's another thing that I'd like to give a bit of perspective. A lot of people are thinking that independent animation is the gold rush or the gold mine for the state of the animation industry. But truth to be told, going indie is not really lucrative. You're not going to make a lot of money, you know? It's not one of those things where you're going to make a lot of money instantly. I think there's going to be a lot of struggling, a lot of loss, and maybe that will be most of the journey. But is it worth pursuing? I think so. I think you just got to find the right people to collaborate with. I think it's good to have some good business plans so you can find ways to make income with that studio. And if you're making original work, you have full ownership of that can be recognized by other people if, let's say, you build traction with your original works with your studio. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.